It's a strange thing. So many people live their entire lives believing they're only average when it comes to intelligence, as if some invisible scoreboard exists and their number just isn't high enough to matter. Maybe it's because of a teacher's offhand comment from years ago, or a comparison to a sibling who was labeled the smart one, or even because of the way movies and television always seem to show intelligence in the same narrow way. Someone solving impossibly complex equations in a dusty lecture hall, or reading Shakespeare for leisure while sipping tea in a leather armchair. And because we don't match that image, we tuck the idea of being truly intelligent into a box labeled, "not for me." But what if I told you that the science on intelligence paints a far more fascinating and far more encouraging picture? That you might already be showing clear signs of a sharper mind than you've ever given yourself credit for? And not just in a superficial, "hey, you're smart too" way, but in a deeply researched, psychology-backed sense. The truth is, intelligence isn't a single thing. It's not just a number on an IQ test or the ability to memorize facts. Psychologists today talk about multiple intelligences, and that includes everything from linguistic skill to spatial reasoning to emotional understanding. And here's the part people miss. Many of the strongest indicators of intelligence are so subtle, so woven into daily life that you might not even notice them in yourself, but others might. They might notice that you have this knack for adapting when plans fall apart, or that you seem to sense when someone's feeling down before they even say a word, or that you always have a clever workaround for some everyday problem. These aren't random quirks, they're signals. So as you're watching this, I want you to mentally scan your own life and see how many of these signs feel familiar. If more than a few of them do, you might be much smarter than you think. Let's start with curiosity. Not the polite, "oh, that's interesting" kind, but the restless, deep dive kind that grabs hold of you and doesn't let go. Psychologists call this epistemic curiosity, and studies show it's strongly correlated with higher cognitive ability. It's the reason some people can't just watch a documentary and move on. They need to look up every related topic, cross-reference sources, and understand the connections. If you've ever stayed up late reading about ancient civilizations, not because you had to, but because you wanted to, that's a sign. Curiosity builds neural pathways. Every new piece of knowledge is like another thread in a web your brain is weaving, making it easier to connect dots in the future. And the most telling part? Highly curious people aren't just interested in their favorite topics, they're open to learning about almost anything, even subjects they initially know nothing about. That openness to novelty is a powerful predictor of intelligence. But curiosity by itself isn't enough. You also need adaptability. Life is essentially a moving target. Intelligent people, research shows, display what's called cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift thinking strategies when circumstances change. Let's say your team's big presentation is suddenly pushed forward by a week, or the restaurant you booked is unexpectedly closed, or you find yourself in a country where you don't speak the language. Adaptable minds don't freeze. They start rearranging the puzzle pieces. This isn't just about quick thinking. It's about holding multiple possibilities in mind and evaluating them rapidly. Neurologically, this involves your prefrontal cortex, the same brain region linked to problem solving and planning. And here's the kicker. Adaptability is often underestimated because it doesn't look flashy. It's quiet, practical, and sometimes even invisible to others. But it's one of the most reliable signs of intelligence in action. Then there's empathy, which people often misunderstand as purely emotional, when in reality it's also highly cognitive. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, has been studied extensively, and the ability to perceive, understand, and respond to others' emotions is deeply tied to social problem solving. Imagine you walk into a meeting and sense the tension before anyone speaks, or you adjust your tone because you notice someone's shoulders drop when a certain topic comes up. That's your brain running complex simulations in real time. You're processing micro-expressions, vocal changes, and contextual cues, often without conscious effort. Studies using brain scans have found that highly empathetic people have more active mirror neuron systems networks that help us mirror the emotional states of others internally. This isn't just kindness, it's an advanced mental skill. Creativity is another one that flies under the radar. Most people think of it as painting, writing, or composing music, but psychologists define creativity as the ability to generate novel and useful ideas. In other words, it's problem-solving at its most imaginative. Research links creativity with divergent thinking, coming up with multiple solutions to a single problem. Let's say you need to transport something heavy up a flight of stairs, but you're alone. Most people might give up or try brute force. A creative mind might think of dismantling it, using levers, or even reimagining the problem entirely, like realizing it doesn't need to go upstairs at all. Neuroscience shows that creativity involves communication between different brain networks that don't usually interact, which means a creative brain is a highly connected one. Now, here's one that might seem less exciting but is incredibly important: self-control. Executive function, your brain's command center, manages impulses, focuses attention, and weighs long-term rewards over short-term temptations. Remember the famous marshmallow test? Kids who could wait for a second marshmallow tended to do better in life years later, and this wasn't magic. It was the result of strong cognitive control. As adults, self-control might look like sticking to a budget, resisting the urge to reply to a rude email instantly, or staying on track with a health goal. Every time you choose to act based on reasoning rather than impulse, you're flexing your brain's control systems. And research consistently finds that higher intelligence is linked to better self-regulation because smart people can simulate the future consequences of their actions before they act. Closely related to self-control is intellectual humility. This is one of my favorites because it turns the stereotype of the know-it-all genius on its head. People with high intelligence tend to be the first to say, "I could be wrong," or "I don't know enough about that yet." Why? Because they understand the vastness of what they don't know. The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to learn, a phenomenon known as the intellectual humility paradox. This humility keeps you in learning mode, protecting you from the cognitive biases that plague overconfident thinkers. And interestingly, studies have found that people with higher cognitive ability are actually better at identifying gaps in their own knowledge, which in turn makes them more accurate in their judgments. Self-awareness ties into this beautifully. Imagine being able to step back and watch your own thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky. That's metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. It's what allows you to notice, mid-argument, that you're getting defensive and choose to soften your tone, or to realize that your frustration with a task isn't because it's hard, but because you're hungry or tired. Self-awareness helps you adjust in real time, preventing small mistakes from snowballing. And because it involves monitoring internal states, it requires a level of mental processing that isn't just common sense, it's a trained, deliberate form of intelligence. Humor is one of the most underestimated markers of intelligence, and the research on this is fascinating. Humor, especially witty or situational humor, demands quick mental processing. You have to understand the context, predict how others will interpret it, and twist expectations just enough to surprise but not confuse. A well-timed observation in a conversation can diffuse tension, build rapport, and even make complex ideas more accessible. In studies, people who scored higher on intelligence tests also tended to create or appreciate more sophisticated humor. It's mental agility in disguise. Resilience and the ability to learn from mistakes are perhaps the most underrated forms of intelligence. Everyone fails, but not everyone treats failure as data. People with a growth mindset, a term popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck, view setbacks as temporary and solvable. They analyze what went wrong, adapt, and try again. This process strengthens neural pathways, just like physical exercise strengthens muscles. Over time, this ability to learn from mistakes compounds, making these individuals far more effective problem solvers than those who avoid challenges to protect their ego. Finally, deep focus. In a world constantly screaming for your attention, the ability to fully immerse yourself in a task is like a superpower. Psychologists call this flow, and it's strongly correlated with high performance and creativity. Flow requires just the right balance between challenge and skill. And once you're in it, your brain is operating at peak efficiency. You're not just doing the task, you're inside it, absorbing every detail, losing track of time. This kind of focus isn't about grinding endlessly. It's about directing your mental energy with precision. Now, when you put all these traits together, curiosity, adaptability, empathy, creativity, self-control, intellectual humility, self-awareness, humor, resilience, and focus, you start to see a richer picture of intelligence than any single test score could provide. And maybe, as you've been watching this, you've recognized more of these traits in yourself than you expected. If so, here's the real takeaway. You might have been living with an outdated, overly narrow definition of intelligence for years. The world needs to stop telling people that being smart is about acing exams or rattling off trivia. True intelligence is a living, breathing set of abilities that help you navigate reality in all its complexity. And the best part? Every single one of these traits can be developed further. The more you notice and nurture them, the sharper your mind becomes.